I have done a bunch of predictions on this channel during the offseason for college football, but in this video I wanted to talk about 25 of my boldest predictions for the 2024 college football season. These are predictions that I actually think are going to happen, but maybe I wouldn't bet my money on some of these predictions actually happening. But let's start off at 25, and number 25 is the least bold of my predictions. The further we get into this video, the more bold these predictions are going to be. But for my 25th bold prediction, I think Clemson does not take the right step forward offensively and they go 8-4 again. I really don't like what Clemson has offensively. I don't trust Cade Klubnik at quarterback. They have an average offensive line and unproven wide receivers. They also have a tough schedule, so I think they go 8-4 again. At number 24, I have Colorado making a bowl game. I don't expect Colorado to be a really good team, but I do think there is optimism for this team, and I do think they take a step forward. They brought in some great transfers and they returned Shadir Sanders at quarterback. They beefed up the line of scrimmage, adding some solid 4-star transfers. And their receiving room is very good. They have LeJontay Wester and Will Shepard joining the team, and they have Travis Hunter as well. I like what this Colorado team has offensively, and their offensive line shouldn't be as bad as it was last season, so I think they win exactly 6 games. At number 23, I have Florida State winning the ACC, and on top of that, I think they have a top 10 scoring defense in the country. Miami is going to be a very good team, but I trust Florida State more to win the ACC, and I think they have great defensive upside. They have one of the top cornerbacks in the country, Frentress Cypress. They have great pieces up front with the transfer Marvin Jones Jr. Mike Norvell brought in one of the top portal classes in the country again, and I expect Florida State to be a very good team again. And I think they get it done and win the ACC again. At number 22, I think Nebraska wins 9 games and they end the long drought of missing bowl games. I really don't see this team missing a bowl game in 2024. There is way too much defensive upside and they have a really good head coach in Matt Rule. They have a great coaching staff in general. They bring back defensive coordinator Tony White, and this was a top 20 defense last season. They will likely be a top 15 defense next season. They add 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola, and I think they will take a step forward in the passing game. They don't even have to be good in the passing game. They just have to throw more touchdowns than interceptions. Their passing game was atrocious last season and they still went 5-7. This is absolutely a 7-win team or better in 2024, and I trust this team to win 9 games with Matt Rule in 2024. At number 21, I have Boise State going 11-1 with a loss to Oregon, and I have them making the 12-team playoffs. I trust Boise State the most out of any group of 5 team. I think they have great defensive upside. They have a lot of guys back on the defensive side of the ball. And they add former 5-star quarterback Malachi Nelson. Spencer Danielson turned this team around last season after being promoted to head coach. And I like Boise State to have a great season in 2024 with their only loss coming to Oregon. And I think they make the 12-team playoffs. At number 20, I think Florida makes a bowl game and Billy Napier keeps his job. I really think Florida is being a little underrated heading into next season. They have one of the top portal classes in the country, and they have a lot of starters back from last season. Graham Mertz is back at quarterback, and they have great options at wide receiver. Eugene Wilson will probably have a 1,000-yard receiving year, and he is back. And they also brought in Elijah Badger and Shamir Dyke from the portal, and Shamir Dyke has experience playing with Graham Mertz before at Wisconsin. I like what Florida has offensively, and they added some guys in the secondary like Asa Turner, and I think this team is going to be better in 2024. And I think this is too talented of a team to miss out on a bowl game again. They have a brutal schedule, but there are some games that they might be favorites in, and I think they win 6 games. My next prediction is that Kentucky takes a step down and misses a bowl game. I could totally be wrong about this prediction, and I wouldn't bet my money on this prediction, but I really think Drake Stoops and Kentucky is due for a down season. They will have a tougher 2024 schedule, and they no longer play in a weak SEC East. I think other teams in the SEC like Florida and Auburn are going to be a lot better, and I think Kentucky will finally lose to Louisville in 2024. It's just the way I ended up predicting their schedule, and I had them going 5-7. I could easily be wrong about this prediction, but I don't necessarily think Brock Vandagriff is going to be a great quarterback, and they lost their 1,000-yard rusher Ray Davis to the NFL. I do think Kentucky takes a step down and misses a bowl game. At 18, I think North Carolina takes a step back offensively and only wins 6 games, and Mack Brown retires after the season is over. I really think North Carolina is due to take a step back. They only returned 4 starters offensively, and they lost their quarterback Drake May to the NFL. They lost a lot of upside offensively, and I don't think Max Johnson is going to be nearly as good as Drake May was. The defense has continued to struggle over the last couple of seasons, and I think Mac Brown is at the end of his coaching career, and I think North Carolina is just going to have a down season. I know they have one of the top running backs in the country, Amarion Hampton, back, and they have solid options in the receiving room with J.J. Jones and Bryson Nebbit at tight end. But I'm really not high on this North Carolina team, and I only think they win 6 games. This next one wasn't originally my bold prediction. I actually kind of stole it from one of my fans, but I do like this bold prediction and I kind of agree with it. This guy says Sam Pittman gets fired and Bobby Petrino takes over the Arkansas head coaching job after next season. And the more I think about this, I actually do agree with this. I do think Sam Pittman is going to get fired, and honestly, they could promote the offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino to take over the Arkansas head coaching job. Arkansas is likely going to miss a bowl game again, so I definitely think this is very possible. At number 16, I think Aiden Childs from Michigan State will be a top 5 Big Ten quarterback, and I think Michigan State wins 7 games in Jonathan Smith's first year there. I really like Jonathan Smith at head coach, and he brought over some solid pieces from that Oregon State roster last season, and that includes Aiden Childs at quarterback, who has a lot of potential. And he also brought over one of the top tight ends from the Pac-12 last season, Jack Felling. Aiden Childs and Jack Felling were huge pieces to this Michigan State offense, and they also return an underrated running back in Nate Carter, so I think this team is going to be a little bit better offensively, and the defense returns some young guys. They lost a lot through the portal, but Jonathan Smith also did a great job in the portal at bringing in pieces. Aiden Childs is young, but he was the backup to DJU last season, and he was impressive in the little time he played. There's not that many great quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and I honestly think Aiden Childs is going to be a top 5 Big Ten quarterback. And I think that will be enough to get Michigan State to win 7 games, which would be a pretty solid step up from last season. My next bold prediction is that Notre Dame will win a home playoff game. Let's be honest, Notre Dame really hasn't won anything in years. But they also haven't been in a conference, so their path has been a little bit tougher. But I like what Notre Dame has heading into next season. I think Marcus Freeman has this team on the rise. They have one of the top secondaries in the country, and they add RJ Oben in the front 7. He was a huge disruptor on the edge for Duke last season. The front 7 should also be solid. The questions come offensively, but they added Riley Leonard at quarterback from Duke, and they added the offensive coordinator from LSU, who led the #1 scoring offense that had Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. If Notre Dame takes the right step forward offensively, they will be a top 10 team in the country. And I think they are going to be a little bit better offensively. I think they will get the 8th seed, and I think they host a home playoff game, and I think they win it. I really like what Notre Dame has defensively. They should have a top 10 defense in the country, and I trust Marcus Freeman and this Notre Dame team to take another step forward. At number 14, I think Alabama's Jalen Milroe finishes second in the Heisman voting. And for this to happen, Jalen Milroe would have to develop a more consistent passing game under Kalen DeBoer. But Kalen DeBoer helped Michael Penix Jr. develop his game, and I think he is going to do the same for Jalen Milroe. Kalen DeBoer is a great offensive mind, and Jalen Milroe is a freak athlete, and if he develops a passing game, he is going to be a dangerous quarterback. I like Jalen Milroe to take a step forward and finish second in the Heisman voting. At 13, I think Ole Miss beats Georgia in the regular season, and I think they make the SEC championship game. I don't think Ole Miss is a better team than Georgia. I think Georgia's roster is too incredibly talented, and they have a lot more depth than Ole Miss does. But Georgia has 3 brutal road games, and I think they dropped the game later in the season at Ole Miss. And I think because of that, Ole Miss is going to have a good enough resume to make the SEC championship game over Texas. I have Texas losing to Georgia, but I think Ole Miss goes 11-1 and beats Georgia and wins the tiebreaker and gets in the SEC championship game over Texas. I really like what this Ole Miss team has offensively with both Jackson Dart and Trey Harris back, but they also added some pieces up front on the defensive line like Walter Nolan and Princely U, and they have the #1 transfer portal class in the country. This is a team that had 2 losses to Georgia and Alabama last season. They are going to take a step forward in 2024, and I think they make the SEC championship game. At number 12, I think NC State makes the ACC championship game after their second 10-win season in school history. Yes, NC State has only won 10 games once in school history, but Dave Doeren has led this team to multiple 8+ win seasons and a few 9-win seasons. Last season, they won 9 games, but I think Grayson McCall is going to be a difference maker at quarterback. NC State has had quarterback struggles in recent memory, and the offense hasn't been great, but the defense has been consistently good, and I think they have great offensive upside heading into 2024. They add Noah Rogers, Wesley Grimes, and Justin Joel Lee from the portal. They are all solid options at wide receiver, And Justin Jolie led UConn in receiving yards last season as a tight end. NC State also adds 800-yard rusher in Jordan Waters, and their rushing attack should take a step forward. Grayson McCall is a very experienced quarterback, and I think he's an underrated quarterback addition for NC State. I think NC State will have a good defense, and the offense is going to take a step forward. They have a pretty easy schedule as well, and I think they are a big sleeper in the ACC. And I think they win 10 games in the regular season and make the ACC championship game. At number 11, I think Malik Murphy for Duke is a top 5 ACC quarterback and Duke wins 7 games. This is a pretty bold prediction, but like I said, the further in this video we get, the more bold these predictions are going to be. And I really think Malik Murphy is an under-the-radar addition for Duke. And he was highly recruited out of high school. I think he's going to be a great addition for Duke. I like the hire of head coach Manny Diaz. He was the former Penn State defensive coordinator, and he did a pretty great job there. And he also has experience head coaching in the ACC before. I think Duke has some guys back defensively, and Manny Diaz also did a solid job at adding pieces through the portal. I think that Duke offense is going to be a little better in 2024 actually. As long as Malik Murphy stays healthy, this Duke team should be pretty solid. Last season they only won 8 games, but they could have won more games if Riley Leonard didn't get hurt. So their season was devalued a little bit because Riley Leonard got injured. They could have been a 9 or 10 win team if Leonard stayed healthy. I think Duke has pretty solid upside defensively, and I think the offense takes a step forward. I like this Duke team to win 7 games with Malik Murphy at quarterback. At number 10, I think South Florida from the American Conference wins 9 games, with losses to Miami, Alabama, and their only loss in the American Conference coming to Tulane. I think they make the American Championship game, and I think they will have the number 1 scoring offense in the American Conference. South Florida returns the most amount of starters in the American Conference, and they return rising star quarterback Byron Brown. I like their head coach, and I think South Florida takes a step forward, and I think they're going to be a surprise team. At number 9, I think only one Big 12 team and one ACC team make the college football playoff. I just think the Big 10 and SEC is way too stacked. Definitely the SEC after adding Texas and Oklahoma. I think there's some teams in the SEC that are going to be a lot better in 2024. On top of Texas and Oklahoma being very competitive. I think the only team outside of the SEC and Big Ten that gets in the playoff is Notre Dame. My next bold prediction is that Miami wins 10 games but misses the ACC title game and the college football playoff. I have predicted every single Power 4 conference and a bunch of schedules, and this is the way my predictions ended up. I have NC State and Florida State both winning 10 games, but I have NC State making the ACC championship game over Miami. Because I have NC State and Florida State only losing 1 game in conference, but I have Miami losing 2 games in conference. And I think because of that, they don't make the ACC championship game, and I don't think they make the college football playoff. I'm pretty high on this Miami team. Cam Ward is going to be a difference maker at quarterback, and they have great options at wide receiver. Restrepo and George both combined for nearly 2,000 yards last season, and both of them are back. Isaiah Horton is going to have a pretty solid year as well, I believe. And they add 800-yard receiver from Houston, Sam Brown. They added a top 15 running back in Damian Martinez as well from the portal. This offense should be one of the best, not just in the ACC, but in the country. But I think there are some concerns in the secondary that keeps them from making the ACC championship game. And I really still don't trust Mario Cristobal as much as I do Mike Norvell. And I think NC State's easy schedule sets them up to make the ACC championship game. So I do have Miami having a good season, winning 10 games, but missing the college football playoff and the ACC championship game. At number 7, I think Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, and transfer Dylan Edwards from Kansas State combined for more than 2,000 rushing yards. And I think Kansas State wins the Big 12 championship game next season. This is a pretty bold prediction, but I really like this Kansas State defense. They should be solid again. They've been consistently good under Chris Klieman, and they won the Big 12 championship game in 2022. And I think the offense has enough skill position players to make a run in the Big 12. And I think the offense is kind of being slept on. Avery Johnson is a rising star at quarterback, and he's very effective with his legs. He might run for 500 plus yards on the ground. DJ Giddens was a 1,000-yard rusher last season, and he will be back. And I think those 3 guys combined for more than 2,000 rushing yards. And I like Kansas State to have one of the top rushing attacks in the Big 12 and maybe in the country. And I think they win the Big 12 in 2024. These predictions are starting to get very bold, but I do believe these predictions are actually going to happen. And my next bold prediction is that Ole Gordon will run for 2,000 yards, but Oklahoma State will still miss the Big 12 title game. I think Oklahoma State is too streaky of a team, and I like Kansas State and Utah a bit more than Oklahoma State. but Oklahoma State returns Ollie Gordon and all 5 offensive linemen, and I think Ollie Gordon is going to go off in 2024. The reason I have them missing the Big 12 championship game is because there's questions on the defense, and I really don't trust Alan Bowman at quarterback. My next bold prediction is that Iowa is only going to win 7 games in 2024. And I know this is a pretty bold prediction. They returned a bunch of starters from last season. They made the Big Ten championship game and won double-digit games last season. They are near the top of the country for return in production in 2024, but I don't expect them to take a big step forward offensively. And I don't think all of those one-score games are going to go their way in 2024. I think teams like Nebraska, Iowa State, and Wisconsin are all on the rise. And I think Iowa loses to better offensive teams like Washington. I think Washington is a sleeper team. Iowa has a bit tougher of a schedule in 2024, and they no longer play in a weak Big Ten West. I don't think Iowa is going to be a worse team than last year, but I don't think they take a step forward offensively, so I only have them winning 7 games. Don't get me wrong, they should have a top 10 defense in the country, but I'm just not personally too high on this Iowa team. At number 4, I think the SEC has 6 double-digit win teams, but only 5 of those 6 teams make the playoffs, which means a 10-2 SEC team misses out on the college football playoff. That's just the way my conference standings for the SEC ended up, and Missouri was that 10-2 team that I had missing the college football playoff, because they do have an easy schedule, and I don't think their resume is going to be good enough to get them in the playoffs over the 5 teams ahead of them. I personally just think the SEC is going to be a very stacked conference more than it's been in a while. There's so many solid teams in the SEC heading into 2024, and they added Texas and Oklahoma. This is not SEC bias, this is just my honest opinion, and I think the SEC is the most stacked conference in college football, and it might not even be close. These last 3 predictions are pretty bold, but at number 3, I think Georgia Tech beats Florida State to open the season, and I think Georgia Tech wins 7 games with the brutal schedule. Georgia Tech has one of the toughest schedules in the country, so a 7-win season would be a great step in the right direction for head coach Brent Key. But I really do like where this Georgia Tech team is heading with head coach Brent Key. They returned some guys offensively. Haynes King is one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and he is back. They have some options at wide receiver, and Jamal Haynes is back at running back. They hired a new defensive coordinator, and they added a bunch of solid additions through the portal. I think Georgia Tech is going to take a step in the right direction, and I think they are going to make a huge statement in 2024, upsetting Florida State. And if it's not Florida State, I think they beat Notre Dame. I think they are going to win one of those big games, either against Florida State or Notre Dame. I don't see them beating Georgia, though. Georgia is just way too talented of a team. But regardless, my prediction is that Georgia Tech beats Florida State and wins 7 games with the brutal schedule. At number 2, I think California upsets Miami at home, and I think they have a top 4 scoring offense in the ACC, and they win 8 games. And I think California is being slept on. They returned 16 starters, which is tied for second in the ACC, and last season they weren't necessarily that bad of a team. They won 6 games last season. They returned one of the top running backs in the country, Jaden Ott, and they have a top 4 transfer portal class. Justin Wilcox hasn't had great success at California, but in recent memory he has used the portal very well. And they added some pieces defensively to improve the defense. That includes 4-star cornerback Marcus Harris from Idaho, who could honestly be one of the better cornerbacks in the ACC. It's going to be tough for teams on the other side of the country to travel to California and play them at their home. And I think California will win a big game at home this season. And I think their offense is going to be really good in 2024. I see people predicting this team to only win 5 or 6 games, which doesn't make sense. Maybe they win 6 games, that might not surprise me, but I'm buying stock in this California team. I think they take a step forward in 2024 and surprise some people, and I think they win 8 games, on top of having a top 4 scoring offense and upsetting Miami at home. And my boldest prediction for the 2024 college football season is that USC beats Michigan on the road and they finish 4th in the Big Ten with an 8-4 record. I have them finishing behind Penn State, Oregon, and Ohio State. I don't necessarily think USC will be a better team than Michigan, but I do think Michigan is still going to be figuring it out offensively at the quarterback position early in the season. They lost a bunch of guys offensively. They have 5 new starting offensive linemen, and Michigan has a brutal first half of the season. So does USC. But I do think Miller Moss and that USC offense is going to be completely fine early in the season. And the defensive coaching staff is completely revamped, and they have an elite defensive coaching staff that does not get talked about enough. Deontay Lynn led an excellent UCLA defense last season, and I don't think USC is going to be a good team defensively, but they will not be as bad as they were last season. Lincoln Riley coach football teams have won 10 plus games every year until 2023. There's still some concerns with this USC team, but I do think they upset Michigan on the road, and I think they finished 4th in the Big Ten with an 8-4 record. But anyways, that's going to do it for the video. Those are my 25 boldest predictions for the 2024 college football season. A lot of these will not happen, and I understand that, but I'm interested to see how many of these bold predictions actually happen in 2024. But you guys leave some of your bold predictions down in the comments below. That is going to do it for today's video. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing and also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.